want to welcome all our viewers to Ask Dr. Shana. This is David Barker, producer-director for Creatus Media, and I'm here with Dr. Shana. Dr. Shana, what are we going to talk about today?
We're going to talk about personal responsibility.
Yes, I think that's something that hits us all.
So, and as I said before, I would like it very much if anybody would, you have my phone number on my website, if anybody would make a suggestion for future topics, because the coronavirus business is going to go on for quite a while, but I don't see myself saying the same thing over and over. I mean, that's going to bore you all. So if somebody has not heard a particular topic and would like to, would they please either call me any day between 4:30 and 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, because I'm in New York State, or send me an email, and my email address is also listed on my website, and the website is DrShahna. My actual name is only spelt with one H, but I've had so many people call me Shana and Shana. I thought putting in the second H might encourage people to look at it and say Shana. And it's DrShahna.com.
And that is on the screen for everyone to see, so they'll be able to write that down. And again, we look for your comments, topics for suggestions.
I'm doing this to try to help people, but I can take a guess as to what many of you might want help with. But one person who says, I would like to hear a webinar on this subject, it might be something I hadn't even thought of. And you can go back in the list of webinars and you will see I've had 2 webinars on the subject of how to avoid depression in hard times, 2 webinars about how to control your adult anxiety, 1 about how to help your kids with their anxiety, and 1 on suicide prevention, and a bunch of other topics which I might think would be of interest to someone considering the emotional and economic very hard time we're all going through.
So what is it about personal responsibility that...
There was somebody on who was a public health person. Unfortunately, the public radio sort of garbled his name at the beginning, and they never restated it, so I don't know exactly who. But he said that controlling the coronavirus, the spread of COVID-19, is a matter of personal responsibility. In other words, each person has to obey what we all know as the rules. Because you're obeying the rules probably won't do anything for you, but it might save a family member. It might save your neighbor's grandparent. And this is a matter of personal responsibility. There are some states in which the governor has ordered people, when they go out in public, to be wearing a face mask. New York continues to have a very low infection rate, probably because at the beginning of the coronavirus business, this state, and particularly New York City, was the worst for infections in the world. And I think that made an impression on people. And so when they got a list of things they should do, most people complied with it. Because we'd seen enough death from coronavirus.
Especially if you were in New York City too. The photographs of the stacked bodies made a huge emotional impact. I have a question. Do you think that this reluctance for personal responsibility has anything to do with the American culture?
Oh, yes. We have a long tradition going back probably to pre-American Revolution times of having the attitude when some government official orders us to do something of saying, says you, or we have our rugged individualism, which makes some people feel completely entitled to not do what they were told. And we also have a president who says that he personally will never wear a face mask. I don't know what he has against the idea of wearing a face mask. I don't know why he doesn't want to behave like a responsible individual. But I would say to the rest of you, if we don't behave like responsible people, it may be our neighbor, our grandparent, who will die.
Well, how do you think a person can change if they have the attitude, I come first, and the greater good is not my concern. I'm only really concerned about myself, and you know what? I'm not going to wear a face mask. I don't care. It's an infringement of my personal liberties. How do we get? How can we, as a society, as a culture, change this?
Well, I'd say liberty schmiberty. It may be your wife who dies because you won't wear a face mask.
Okay.
So, if you don't feel like being responsible for her death, wear a face mask. Then you can say, well, I did what I was supposed to do, and it's not my problem.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is, people need to sit 6 feet apart. I heard from a reliable source that when our president had a rally of 75,000 people in Texas recently, that public health people had gone around and put a sticker on every other chair, and the sticker said, please don't sit in this chair, sit in either chair to either side of it,
Mm-hmm.
because we're trying to have a little social distancing to keep us all safe.
Right, right.
Well, Trump sent his campaign workers to go around before the meeting and remove all the stickers.
Mm-hmm.
So people sat within inches of each other, and we don't really know, nobody has said, whether some of the 75,000 people who were at that rally have caught coronavirus and are fighting for their lives at this moment.
But
But it wouldn't surprise me.
there was a spike in Texas.
Yes,
So
so you might just connect the two and say, now this irresponsible behavior is obviously encouraged by the president, since it was he who gave the order to his campaign workers, go round and remove all those stickers,
mm-hmm.
so that people will sit in the next chair, which is only a few inches away from the next person.
And this is a president who, when the coronavirus first really started to become an important news, he called it fake news. He repeatedly called it fake news. He did not listen to scientific evidence. He did not listen to the scientific advisors on his cabinet. He seems to be a law
he
unto
has
himself.
a closed mind, number one.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't change over time. And number two, he, being someone with narcissistic personality disorder, is extremely self-centered.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not going to kill him, he's not interested. I think it would be a very nice irony if he got coronavirus and was fighting for his life. I'm not mean enough to say that I hope he would die. That's not the point.
Mm-hmm.
The point is that he has ignored this problem since the beginning, and the problem hasn't gone away. And in terms of providing leadership, well, people think he's not bothering, so why should I? But it's lousy leadership, because what he should be providing is an example of complying with the rules.
Mm-hmm. This kind of raises excuse me. This raises an issue about personal responsibility for me, in terms of, I think everyone has a personal responsibility to participate in our government and actually go vote. I mean, you can choose whichever candidate you want, but this is and always has been important elections, and I think unfortunately, the American public has lost faith in the political process, and a lot of people just kind of opt out and don't take that personal responsibility of going to the polls, of
or sending in a mail-in ballot if you've got
sure.
that. There was a record turnout in 2018, and some of us are hoping for another record turnout because the contrast between Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden could not be, it's almost comical, could not be more marked. So I certainly say everybody should vote, and I was very unhappy to hear that the head of the Supreme Court, Justice Roberts, did not choose to get involved in the voting rights cases, of which there were 3 this year.
Mm-hmm. But it was interesting that he did ask, or did kind of do a partial statement on that Mr. Trump was not exempt from, providing tax returns. So we'll see how that plays out. But at least he did one thing.
He did that.
Yep.
And finding that the president is not above the law and he has to follow subpoenas just like any other citizen.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was very important and very courageous of Mr. Roberts.
I agree, though. He needs to stand up for voting rights, but that kind of gets us into another whole area.
Yes. Anyway, but the point is, we've been told what to do about this coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
Practice social distancing, leave the house with face mask on, and wash your hands. And incidentally, the only thing they say, wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
There is, well, for my New England friends, they say you can sing Yankee Doodle Dandy twice.
Mm-hmm.
I happen to think Happy Birthday to You twice is a little more universal, because after all, Southerners aren't going to be singing Yankee Doodle Dandy. So, but sing it in your head, whichever song you pick, twice, so that you have spent enough time washing your hands. And don't forget to wash between your fingers. Mm-hmm. The best way to do that is just interlock your fingers, and then when they're covered with soap and water, move up and down so that they get washed too. Mm-hmm. And that's a good way to wash your hands whenever you need to. Mm-hmm. So, and none of these things are extremely difficult, expensive, painful. They're all very simple things. And if we don't take the personal responsibility to comply with simple rules, we will see coronavirus still dominating our lives, because there are restaurants which can't open up, and there are movie theaters which can't open up, and lots of things. I called the library yesterday and it's closed.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I would love to go back to the days when I ordered the handicap bus to take me to the library and then pick me up an hour and a half later.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, since the library is closed, that's not open to me right now. So those of us who wish they could go out to lunch or dinner in a nice restaurant with a friend, well, if you adhere to the rules, you bring that day closer.
And I think that's something we all would like to see. At least I would.
Yes. So, and it is your personal responsibility. If you don't comply, then you are as responsible as anybody for the death of someone from your town, because your noncompliance adds up to somebody else's noncompliance, and it winds up being that somebody's grandma just died.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. We talked about that. So,
yes.
This has been wonderful. I think we've covered a lot of ground today. I think this has been very exciting and so important.
And as for the people who feel that this is an abrogation of their personal liberties, for heaven's sakes, we have a national calamity on our hands, and you're just asked to keep your distance from other people, keep a face mask on when you go out in public, and wash your hands periodically for a certain length of time, namely 20 seconds,
Mm-hmm.
which most non-medical Americans don't move the soapy water around on their hands for 20 seconds. They may be as short as 3 or 4 seconds. So, and that's a good habit to change. And against a national calamity, to be asked to do things that are that simple, what about being able to pat yourself on the back, figuratively speaking, and say, well, I'm not an irresponsible person, so I do the simple, the painless, the nearly costless. There are many places that hand away face masks for free these days. When it is asked of me. And so I deserve a pat on the back for being a good, responsible citizen. And I know this is not something that we've had, and it may seem a little bit strange, but it's not hard, and it doesn't take a big amount of time out of your life. I mean, so go along, and then if someone close to you does catch the coronavirus and die, you can say to yourself, I'm not responsible for that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't contribute to that person's death.
Right.
I did everything that I was asked to avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, thank you. This has been great. So we're looking forward to any and all comments. As you see on the screen, you have the website address and you have the phone number, and we invite your comments and suggestions. And
I'd love to hear from even just a few of you, because you perhaps don't realize how hard it is to keep going week after week, and with the feeling, is there anybody out there? Did anybody hear me? Did anybody have an opinion? And it doesn't have to be a favorable opinion.
mm-hmm,
You can be critical.
mm-hmm,
But to bother, and I like phone calls, so that's why I put my phone number up on my website.
mm-hmm,
Because emails can be difficult to interpret sometimes. I mean, did the person mean this way? Are they being sarcastic? Or did they mean it some other way? And it's can be very confusing. Whereas if I have someone on the phone, I can ask them.
Sure. But we are inviting any way that you feel comfortable, because we will respond. But phone calls are preferred. Dr. Shana definitely loves phone calls, so pick up the phone and give her a call.
Okay. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you'll be listening next week. This webinar, there's a new episode every week. And I suppose I'm not going to be saying anything about coronavirus anymore, because I've done many webinars, quite a few, on the subject. And I wish you all well. If you have someone who is fighting coronavirus, I wish them a good outcome. Coronavirus is not, it has a fatality rate between 1% and 5%. So compared to other pandemics, this is not a bad one.
Mm-hmm.
But the public health community expects that we may have a series in this century. So this may only be the first one. So I don't want to be negative. I'm hoping that we will gradually be able to open up as a country, and that businesses will restart, and that people can go to work and earn money in the way that is usual. But the best way to get there as fast as we can is for each and every one of us to decide that they're going to behave like people with personal responsibility. And if you still feel that you're being ordered around, No, for the most part, we're not ordering. We're begging you. For the rest of the community, could you please follow these simple, non-painful, not very difficult rules? So, until next week then, bye-bye.